The very first AEW Redemption took place last night live on pay-per-view in Montreal, and Kenny Omega is still your AEW champion. But one thing that Kenny Omega has lost is probably his friendship with Will Ospreay after the ending of the pay-per-view went down the way it went down. We're going to be talking about all that right now on the All Elite Dirt Sheet.
This is All Elite Dirt Sheet. Hey! 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 Hey!
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the All Elite Dirt Sheet, your AEW Redemption post-show. I know we are a day late. Thank you so much for bearing with me with all the schedule changes. I appreciate everybody who always supports this channel, who subscribes to the All Elite Dirt Sheet, who likes the videos, who follows on TikTok for All Elite Dirt Sheet. Thank you so much for always riding with the Dirt Sheet. We appreciate you very much. AEW Redemption, whoa, what a show. It came and it passes the very first AEW Redemption in the calendar year. It does seem like this is going to be added to their pay-per-view calendar. I thought it was a very good show. I see online that there's a lot of hate for AEW Redemption. AEW Redemption was a show that was added maybe a month and a half ago to 2 months ago. It was added to the rotation. It was a shoe-in for a pay-per-view between AEW Forbidden Door and All In, which I think was needed, being that Forbidden Door is a co-promoted show. And even though they did advance some storylines, you needed a show that was going to advance the stories that are going to go into All In. So I feel like there was a buffer that was needed, especially with a lot of the stories that they were telling. And I think that if anybody went into this show and they saw the show and was disappointed, I don't know if it's a embarrassment of riches. I mean, if AEW Redemption was a bad show, then that's a great problem to have because the show was top-notch quality. You got crazy action all night. You had a killer main event. You had 6 title matches. You had shocking victories. You had title changes. I thought it was a really good show. And then you end the show on a cliffhanger angle. It's awesome when you end the show on a cliffhanger angle, which makes you want to tune into Dynamite on Wednesday. So with that being said, I don't know if it's because of the quality of some of the other shows this year, like Revolution, like AEW Double or Nothing. Maybe it's because of the top-notch quality that AEW's been putting on for pay-per-views that people went into the show expecting that and did not get that. But if you look at Redemption, it was a solid show. It was a good show. It was not a failure of a show by a long shot. So I'm a little confused by the hate. And this is not just, Mike Dinero, AEW guy, just kissing AEW's ass. This is me sitting down and watching a pay-per-view and not having anything to complain about. Like, was every match of the year candidates? No, but it was a solid show. Everything was coherent. Everything played into the next thing. And just like AEW been doing on Dynamite, they had one story play out throughout the whole entire show. Starting with the Death Riders versus the Young Bucks with the post-match angle, then playing in with the backstage promo with Will Ospreay and Jon Moxley, and then ending the show the way they did. You were interested in this story and the way it was progressing throughout the show. It was like an episodic episode of Dynamite that was beefed up for 5 hours with fucking banger matches. I mean, I don't know. I don't get the hate. Especially with what we're getting on the other channel. It's like, what are we complaining about? I don't know. I honestly don't know why AEW, it's the cool thing to do to hate on AEW, but if you hate on AEW in 2026, then you're just blind. AEW has been having an absolute stellar year. Some of the best shows that they've ever put on in company's history has taken place this year. I don't know what you're watching. If you're watching Redemption and saying that it was a failure of a show, I went online, I went on X, and I saw people just crucifying this show. And I'm like, wow, it was not. If your biggest problem is it's not to the status of Revolution or Double or Nothing, which are regarded now as two of the best shows in company history, if that's your biggest problem, that you put on a solid show, a solid pay-per-view that was worth every penny, but it wasn't your greatest show ever, that's an embarrassment of riches. And AEW shows on this show again an embarrassment of riches, along with the roster that they have. Some of these combinations for these matches were absolutely insane. Like some of these matches that they put on were insane when you think about how many megastars they have right now in this company, how many future stars they have in this company, how many stars you could consider some of the best wrestlers in the world in this company on these shows. I don't know. I just want to get into it right now. Let's talk about AEW Redemption, live from Montreal. Truth be told, I did not see the buy-in. I had to watch this the day after, so I'm shooting this on a Monday. I saw it Monday, so I did not see the buy-in. I apologize. I did know that they paid homage to the Rougeau brothers being in Montreal. Nice touch. I know Jacques Rougeau kind of went heel on the crowd, telling everyone to kiss his ass. Typical Mountie, huh? But I need to check that out. I know there was also a trios title matchup that took place on the buy-in. So we're just going to talk about the pay-per-view portion on this show. We're starting out hot. 6-way number one contender ladder match for the International Championship. Speedball Mike Bailey, Jack Perry, Nick Wayne, El Clone, Commander, and the Beast Mortos. What a way to start a pay-per-view. If you want to talk about getting the crowd out of their seat and excited for the rest of the show, you start out with a ladder match like this. Now, I know AEW in the past, they have banger openers, especially this year. We've seen the Young Bucks versus FTR in the opening matchup. We've seen FTR versus Cope and Cage in the opening matchup. That was a killer matchup. We've seen the Young Bucks versus, what was it? What was the Forbidden Door matchup? You had the Young Bucks, you had Shingo Takagi, and I'm forgetting the matchup, but you had this insane match. No, it was the Young Bucks. It was Mystico and Mascara Dorada and Shingo, and I forgot who Shingo's partner was, but it's going to hit me when I'm like least expecting it. So that was another insane opening matchup. AEW has been pulling off these crazy opening matches. This was no different. This ladder match was absolutely insane. Some of the freaking spots in this matchup is just, bro. Speedball Mike Bailey with the big moonsault off of the top of the ladder in the entranceway, just to be followed up by Jack Perry hitting a big moonsault off of the ladder. Jack Perry hitting a top of the ladder Canadian Destroyer onto Nick Wayne onto another ladder. Commander doing the tightrope walk and then hitting a crazy splash onto the table, taking out Nick Wayne. Beast Mortos, who is obviously got the size advantage on his opponents in this matchup and flying higher than most of them. This was a crazy matchup. The crowd was 100% behind the hometown boy, Speedball Mike Bailey. I said it on the predictions. Mike Bailey needed to win this matchup, and that he did. Mike Bailey is your number one contender for the international champion and will be catching that title shot in at Grand Slam Mexico in 2 weeks. I don't know why that match needs to take place in Mexico. It's going to be a lot of fun. That crowd in Arena Mexico is going to go wild to see Mike Bailey and Kyle Fletcher. I think that crowd in Mexico probably would have liked it more if Bandito was the international champion and representing in Mexico. But I understand why, because, I mean, right now with everything you got going on with Kyle Fletcher, Okada, and Takeshita, you're not going to just hot shot a title change just because Bandito's Mexican and you're going to Mexico. So I understand why they did what they did. We'll talk about that matchup later in the night. But this was a very good matchup. Really good way to start off the show, and really big win for Speedball Mike Bailey, somebody who needed the win because Speedball, ever since losing to Kevin Knight and losing Kevin Knight, both of them, he lost Kevin Knight and then he lost to Kevin Knight. It felt like Speedball was kind of just lost in the shuffle. We've seen Speedball after that take a loss to Jake Doyle on Collision. So he was kind of lost in the shuffle. He needed a big win like this. So I'm glad that Speedball got that victory against 5 other competitors in this ladder matchup and is now your number one contender. Next matchup of the night, we're keeping it hot and heavy. We got the Young Bucks versus Will Ospreay and Jon Moxley. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. Embarrassment of riches. When you have Will Ospreay and Jon Moxley on the second matchup of the night, and these are two of your biggest stars that you have on your show, or like anywhere in the world, two of the biggest stars in wrestling, Jon Moxley and Will Ospreay, you just have them in a matchup here. that just shows how stacked this roster is, how stacked this card is, and how stacked AEW is in general. When you have names like Will Ospreay and Jon Moxley in the second matchup of the night because you have a main event that's got a top-notch star like Kenny Omega in there. Like, it is insane how stacked this is. But this was a very good matchup that told a very intriguing story. Early on, Nick Jackson was hurt. And during the matchup, Jon Moxley was taking the fight to Nick Jackson. And there was a lot of miscommunication between Moxley and Will Ospreay, especially in the end when the referee gets knocked down and Jon Moxley goes to use the chair and take out Nick Jackson once and for all. Will Ospreay grabs the chair and says, "What are we doing? What are we doing? We're not trying to end this man's career." And while Will Ospreay has the chair in his hand, Matt Jackson super kicks Will Ospreay with the chair in his hand, taking him out. And then the Young Bucks just hit a barrage of super kicks onto Jon Moxley to finish them off. 1, 2, 3. The Young Bucks win the matchup. And the Young Bucks, this is not the last we see of them by a long shot on the show, but the Young Bucks, eventually we'll talk about this, are the new number one contenders for the tag team titles. Tim, you called this, bro. You've been saying for weeks the Young Bucks versus Cope and Cage at All In. I thought if there was a possibility to do the Young Bucks versus the New Day at All In, you take that opportunity. We are getting the Young Bucks versus Cope and Cage. We'll talk about that as well. But the story is Will Ospreay was not willing to take this matchup to the next level like Jon Moxley was. Will Ospreay was not willing to permanently injure one of his competitors. Jon Moxley was. Now we have a little bit of a miscommunication here. Will Ospreay thinks that this is no longer about winning matches. Jon Moxley, what are you doing? This plays out throughout the night. We'll talk about that later on. AEW International Championship matchup, Bandito versus Kyle Fletcher. What is there to say? You got two guys who could easily be regarded as the best wrestlers in the world right now. Whatever you want to say about Kyle Fletcher is an absolute stud. Kyle Fletcher is the future of AEW. The guy's only like 25, 26, and he's this good now. Imagine when he's 30. Imagine when he's 35. Kyle Fletcher's this good now. And Bandito, we talk about it week in and week out. Bandito has to be in the conversation for best wrestlers in the world. Bandito is just putting on insane matches. He's the Ring of Honor champion, but that's also where my issue comes in. Bandito has taken 3 single losses on pay-per-view in 2026 for AEW. This is the Ring of Honor champion. I don't think that we should continue putting Bandito in title matches where he's going to lose. We saw him lose to Jon Moxley last month. We saw him take a loss to Andrade. I don't think Bandito should be losing when on Ring of Honor, he is the world champion and he's looked at as their top guy. Why is it that Bandito could win matches in ROH, but he can't win matches, singles matches on pay-per-view in AEW? So I could understand. I understand why Kyle Fletcher won this matchup. I don't understand why Bandito is constantly losing on pay-per-view. I don't think that he should be put in this position to lose on pay-per-view. He's your Ring of Honor champion. If you want to make Ring of Honor a part of the AEW ecosystem, maybe you don't have him lose all the time. Maybe you don't tell the story that he's unstoppable in Ring of Honor, but then he gets stopped here. It's the same thing they do with Athena. Athena, whenever she comes to AEW, she'll take a loss or two. In Ring of Honor, she's absolutely damn near untouchable. So it's like, I don't see like why 2 different companies owned by the same person are going to have such differing booking. But here's the thing. I will say, this does not take away from what was a phenomenal matchup. In my eyes, this has to be match of the night, right? This was just 2 guys just going absolutely ape shit in there. Super fun matchup. 2 of the best wrestlers in the world, like I said. Bandito and Fletcher have great chemistry with each other. Fletcher hit a nasty brain buster off the apron, which just was sickening. Bandito hit a 21 plex, but he had the dragon. He hit it as a dragon plex because he had Kyle Fletcher in a full Nelson. Kyle Fletcher muscles him over. Bandito hits the ropes, springboards back, hits a 21 plex as a dragon suplex, 6-6 spot. Bandito has opportunity to hit a avalanche, code red, just insane. Like, I can't even put into words how good this matchup was. The matchup ends when Kyle Fletcher hit an avalanche Michinoku driver and then a top rope turnbuckle brainbuster. 1, 2, 3. Kyle Fletcher did it on his own. He did not need the Don Callis family. Kyle Fletcher is still your international champion and has a date with Speedball Mike Bailey in 2 weeks, August 5th, Grand Slam, Mexico. Next up was the double chain matchup. Now, I want to apologize on the prediction show. I did say this was a dog collar matchup. This was not a dog collar matchup. It was just a double chain match. So the teams had the chain wrapped around their wrist as opposed to their neck. Small difference there. But the Bang Bang Gang versus the Dogs. Clark Connors, David Finlay versus Juice Robinson and Switchblade Jay White. Really, really good matchup. I don't think it actually went to that next level to be a great matchup. I did feel like this was not too spectacular. Was a little annoyed with the Death Riders interfering in this matchup. I wanted to see this matchup come to an end, but I could see this leading to Death Riders and the Dogs versus the Bang Bang Gang in Blood and Guts, because I know usually around the summers when they do Blood and Guts. So maybe they do Blood and Guts with the Death Riders and the Dogs versus the Bang Bang Gang. I don't know. I think this has to lead to a big matchup for Jay White. Maybe a matchup between Jay White and David Finlay at All In. But yeah, it was a good matchup. Violent matchup too. I just don't think it took it to that next level. Nonetheless, fun matchup, fine matchup. In the end, the Dogs win. I thought that the Bang Bang Gang was going to win. We did have the Death Riders interfere, like I said, which led to the rest of the Bang Bang Gang coming out. The Gun Club, Ace Austin came out and fought off Wheeler Yuta, Daniel Garcia. But then from the back, Marina Shafir is there, and she passes David Finlay the Shillelagh, which leads to David Finlay taking out Juice Robinson with the Shillelagh, and then the Dogs get the victory. Notice Juice Robinson got the pinfall, though. Juice Robinson got the loss. Jay White did not. So I think that there's still legs for a possible Jay White-David Finlay matchup, probably going down at All In, which if you add Jay White and David Finlay to what is already a super stat card for All In, that's pretty big. We're talking Young Bucks versus Copen Cage. We're talking Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay. We're talking, I'm spoiling a lot of shit here. We're talking Willow versus Mercedes. And then you add to all of that, Jay White versus David Finlay. I mean, that's already looking like a stat card. As I talked about earlier, the story is going to continue to play out because next up on the show, backstage, Renee Paquette is there and she's interviewing Will Ospreay and is quickly interrupted by Jon Moxley. And Will Ospreay wants to know, why did Jon Moxley want to take this match to the next level? We're not here to permanently injure people. We're here to win matches. Why are we trying to permanently take out Nick Jackson? And Jon Moxley said that Will Ospreay, he wanted to know why Will Ospreay stopped him. And Jon Moxley said that you have to understand this isn't just another matchup at All In. No more being Mr. Nice Guy. You can't be everyone's friend. You can't just turn your back on anyone. You need to understand this is do or die. This is war. We're not winning matches out here. This is war. We need to kill our opponents, to make it known. Because if you don't pull the trigger, Will, Jon Moxley will pull the trigger, which we see play out later on in the night. Love how even on pay-per-view, you have a story. Not start off the show, second match of the show, but beginning of the show, middle of the show, end of the show. That's how you tell stories. AEW TBS champion, we have Maya World versus Hikaru Shida. Going into this, I said Maya World needs to keep her momentum hot. I like Hikaru Shida. I feel like I've been talking so much shit about her. I like Hikaru Shida, but Hikaru Shida, let's be honest, right now, I think that there's a lot of names that could be holding the TBS champion and could do a better run than her. And I think that right now, AEW pulled the trigger. They struck when the iron was hot. Maya World had an incredible showing at the Owen Hart. She had an incredible showing, made it all the way to the finals, and had an absolute banger matchup with Mercedes, probably one of the best women's matches that AEW has ever put on. And then everyone was scared that Maya World was going to go right back to Ring of Honor. And I said it right after. I was the Forbidden Door review when I said Maya World needs to continue to stay hot on AEW, because if she doesn't, this was all for nothing then. And that's exactly what they did. They pulled the trigger. Maya World is new TBS champion. I love this. She absolutely deserves this. She's definitely a star, and I'm glad that AEW is striking when the iron is hot. Maya World walking into AEW All In as the TBS champion is a big deal for a star that they just made organically. Organically, was not forced. Crowd got behind her. She's incredible in the ring. I'm so glad that Maya World is your new AEW TBS champion. AEW tag title matchup. We had Cope and Cage versus the Death Riders, Pac and Claudio. This was a very fun matchup too. First of all, in Canada, the Canadian crowd got spoiled. They couldn't sing Edge's theme song Cope's theme song because he was quickly attacked before the matchup by Pac and Claudio. This leads to Christian Cage coming down. They attack him on the ramp, and this is just a mauling between the Death Riders. Cope and Cage, they found a way to fight back. And we all know that Cope and Cage are probably on their last run as a tag team. Maybe as a singles too. I mean, I don't think that Cope is going to be around for much longer, but really good to see Cope and Cage retain the titles here. And then the post-match stuff that we saw, we're getting the Young Bucks versus Cope and Cage, an absolute dream match. I think now, even though this is a stat that, whatever, is just like my geek ass brain thinking about this, the Young Bucks, they defeated the Hardy Boys in Ring of Honor, in House of Hardcore, and other promotions, I'm sure. The Young Bucks, they defeated Team 3D at House of Hardcore. The Dudley Boys. The Young Bucks could make it a hat trick, and they could defeat Edge and Christian. When you think about the tag teams that really revolutionized tag team wrestling in the early 2000s, it was the Dudleys, the Hardys, Edge and Christian. The only teams that mattered. The Young Bucks checked off the Hardys. The Young Bucks checked off the Dudleys. The Young Bucks have the opportunity to wrestle and check off Edge and Christian. It's going to be very interesting. Like I said, I thought that there was going to be a dream matchup between the New Day and the Young Bucks. I mean, that's probably going to come down the line. You could probably do that at Wrestle Dream. It would make sense, dream match. But Cope and Cage versus the Young Bucks is an absolute dream match, and I'm excited for that matchup going down at All In. It's made official. Should be a lot of fun. No holds barred. The Painmaker Chris Jericho versus Tommaso Ciampa. This was a wild hardcore brawl. If you know anything, AEW likes to go wild for their sickos on pay-per-view, and this was no different. A crazy no holds barred matchup. Weapons that we've never seen in a matchup before. I'm talking, first of all, I like the callback. Before I get into the other weapons, I like the callback from the Beach Break matchup where Jericho goes into the bag and he has sand from the Beach Break matchup. Tommaso Ciampa used the sand. He threw it into Jericho's eyes at Beach Break. Jericho threw the sand into Tommaso Ciampa's eyes here at Redemption, getting his redemption. We had Jericho pull out a bag of hockey pucks that had glued on thumbtacks, which is fucking violent and innovative. We had Jericho scraping sandpaper on the head of Tommaso Ciampa, which was sickening. Tommaso Ciampa did the same thing to Jericho, bloodying him up as well. Dude, absolutely crazy things pulled out in this matchup. Hockey sticks. Tommaso Ciampa is such a fucking heel, though. Pulling out the Boston Bruins jersey again, the heel heat, hitting the pile driver or the Project Ciampa on the mascot stuffy, whatever. Right, really fun spots by Ciampa. Ciampa is just an absolute psycho in there, whether that's being comedic or just being downright brutal. Ciampa plays off the psycho killer gimmick so well. The Painmaker just loves pain. The Painmaker just loves to bring that violence, and that's exactly what he did. He wins the matchup by submitting Tommaso Ciampa, not with a submission hold, but with a power drill. We've seen Tommaso Ciampa try to use the power drill onto Chris Jericho in the past. So after putting Ciampa through a barbed wire table with a Death Valley driver, after hitting Tommaso Ciampa with a mirror. Oh, no, Jericho taking a powerbomb onto a mirror and having glass literally sticking out of his back. It was a power drill to the head where Tommaso Ciampa was called it quits. I mean, shit, this is like things that you'd see out of fucking a Saw movie. This was just insane. Chris Jericho wins the matchup. As predicted, they're probably going to have the rubber matchup at AEW All In. It would make sense. And then if that's the case, I got to say Tommaso Ciampa takes the matchup at All In. I mean, make him a star on the biggest stage that you have. I think that would be fitting. Really, really fun. We got a really weird backstage segment with Mick Foley and Divine Dominion, where Divine Dominion basically told him to bow down. And he was like, bow, wow, bow, wow. I don't even want to talk about this. Next, AEW National Champion Mark Davis versus Andrade El Idolo. Really, really fun matchup. Andrade is an absolute star. Comes out with new music. Had the babes all on him. Dude looked like $1 million. Crazy action. Andrade almost won this matchup in the first opening seconds of the matchup, hitting that spinning back elbow onto Mark Davis. Mark Davis found a way to kick out. A lot of back and forth action. The crowd wanted Andrade to take his pants off, which he did. He hits Dios de los Muertes and then the DM, and then we have a new national champion, Andrade El Idolo. It is about time that Andrade holds gold in AEW. This is his second run in AEW and his first title win. Say what you want to say about the first run. I was not a fan of his first run either. I'm a fan of Andrade, but the whole shit about the Andrade family office and his faction and being with Private Party and Matt Hardy, and then having Jose his manager, it didn't fit. It didn't work. And I'm glad that Andrade left to come back, because what Andrade is now is a fucking star. He's amazing. This man oozes charisma. This man could be world heavyweight champion. And I'm so glad that they finally put gold on him. He is now your national champion. I'm sure you'll have a big, big matchup at Grand Slam Mexico in 2 weeks. I'm sure he's going to have a massive matchup at All In. A lot of fun. I am so glad Andrade El Idolo holds gold in AEW. Speaking of gold, we have the AEW Women's World Championship matchup in the co-main event. Willow Nightingale versus Thekla. This was a really fun matchup. Willow looked like $1 million in there. She was beating the shit out of Thekla. She was outsizing Thekla. Thekla found ways to get the offense in, but let's go right to the chase. We have a new women's champion. We are not getting Mercedes versus Thekla. We are getting Willow versus Mercedes. Does this lead to a triple threat? I don't know. I would have to think that this was the original plans for All In. If Willow doesn't get injured, then Willow wins the tournament. Willow goes and beats Thekla for the world champion at All In. I could see how then at All In, Mercedes makes a return and challenges for that world champion against Willow. Makes more sense. Babyface versus heel. But because Willow came back early, I could see how, and Mercedes had to be, put into the tournament because Willow's injury. I can see how they moved the plans up. So Willow wins the title at Redemption, and then Mercedes goes against Willow instead of at Wrestle Dream. We have that matchup at All In. Shout out to Thekla. Thekla was not given much. The last 4 or 5 months in AEW, the women's division been up and down, it been hot and cold, but for a lot of Tekla's title reign, no faults of her own, the women's division was cold. And she made it feel special. She had a fun title reign. Thekla showed a lot of personality, and I'm very happy that Thekla was the world champion. Is this going to be Tekla's last time as the women's champion? I hope not, because she made me a big fan of hers the last couple months as the AEW Women's World Champion. I'm so proud of Willow. I'm so happy for Willow. I'm a big fan of Willow. She's from New York. I'm from New York. It makes sense. I'm a big fan of Willow. And her winning the AEW Women's Champion just feels right. I'm so glad. She's the very first AEW Women's Grand Slam champion. She won the World Champion. She won the TBS Champion. She's a former tag team champion. Really, really cool to see. Shout out Willow. It's going to be interesting what they do at All In. Are we going to see Willow versus Mercedes again? Or are we going to fit Thekla in there? What do you do with Thekla at All In? I don't know. It's going to be a lot of fun. But nonetheless, we have a new world champion, and it is Willow Nightingale. Which means we only have one match left, and that is Kenny Omega versus the Jet Kevin Knight for the AEW World Champion, which was a very fun matchup. You threw Kevin Knight into the deep waters, and I think that Kevin Knight swam. If you ask me, this was very reminiscent of All Out last year when it was Hangman Page versus Kyle Fletcher. You put Kyle Fletcher in the main event to see if he sinks or swims, and he swims. He shows that he could hang with the big boys. Kevin Knight showed that he could hang with the big boys. This was a fun matchup. Kenny Omega was on rare form, though. He was on God mode. The guy was kicking ass and taking names. This was the Kenny Omega of old. This was the cleaner, the best bout machine, and he looks like $1 million in there. Some of those V triggers to Kevin Knight was absolutely sickening. Really fun matchup. In the end, Kenny Omega is still your AEW World Champion, which everyone predicted. Everybody said was going to happen. Nobody thought that Kevin Knight was going to win the title and then go main event all in against Will Ospreay. It would make no sense. Everybody knew Kenny Omega was going to win this. It was very predictable, but I always say, just because something's predictable does not mean it's bad. It was a fun matchup. It was a good matchup, and it showed Kevin Knight could hang in the main event. This guy's going to be a star. He needs things of course, there's things he could work on. Promo skills, he could work on it. This guy's going to be a star, and he showed that here in the main event of a pay-per-view. But what happened post-match is where we're going to continue the story with Will Ospreay and the Death Riders, because the Death Riders, they swarmed the ring. The Young Bucks come out and they tried to even the odds, but the number game was just too much for the Elite. The Death Riders are taking out the Young Bucks. They're taking out Kenny Omega. Jon Moxley said that if Will Ospreay will not pull the trigger, he will. Will Ospreay comes into the ring and he's trying to stop the Death Riders. Jon Moxley pulls out the plastic bag, the same plastic bag that choked out and suffocated Bryan Danielson to the point that he lost his world title in 2024. The same plastic bag that was used on countless opponents of the Death Riders. Jon Moxley hands the bag over to Will Ospreay. He tells Will Ospreay to put the bag over Kenny Omega's head and suffocate him. He tells Will Ospreay to end Kenny Omega. This is war. This is not your friend. Take this shit going down August 30th at All In very serious. This is not your friend. It's kill or be killed. You are in the jungle, Will Ospreay. You are in the jungle. And only the survival of the fittest, only the strong survive. You got to kill this man right now. You got to take him out. And Will Ospreay refuses. He refuses. Instead, Will Ospreay just takes out the whole Death Riders. I guess you could say Will Ospreay's out of the Death Riders because Will Ospreay takes out Pac. He takes out Claudio. He takes out Daniel and Yuta, and then he takes out Jon Moxley. They retreat. Jon Moxley's pissed. Will Ospreay turned his back on the Death Riders. Kenny Omega steps up. He sees the bag, and Will Ospreay's trying to explain to him, like, hey, I stopped it. I stopped them from doing this to you. They pose a little bit. They raise each other's hands. They're celebrating as the Death Riders retreat into the crowd. And then Kenny Omega goes behind Will Ospreay while he's posing to the crowd and hits him with the one-wing angel, just like he did to AJ Styles all those years ago. Hits him with the one-wing angel. And it was incredible because Jon Moxley told Will Ospreay, these are not your friends. Watch your back. And Kenny Omega proved Jon Moxley right, and it's too late. Will Ospreay, it's too late. You already made your bed. You left the Death Riders. You took out the Death Riders. But the Death Riders were right the whole time. The Young Bucks are a little apprehensive to pose with Kenny Omega, but they pose anyway, posing over the body of Will Ospreay. Bro, this was cinema. What a way to end the show. Does this mean Kenny Omega turned heel? Who knows? The story that they could tell is Kenny Omega sees the bag and he sees that Will Ospreay for 1 second. For 1 second, Will Ospreay considered doing it, which is enough for Kenny Omega to be like, fuck you, I'm taking you out now. Or this really could be Kenny Omega saying, yep, keep your eye on the ball because I'm coming to take you out at All In. Jon Moxley was right. You never trust Kenny Omega. You never turn your back on the cleaner. Great fucking way to end the show. That is how you end a pay-per-view. You should end your pay-per-views with something that's going to make your current show, your next episode of Dynamite, must watch. You should end your pay-per-views with people saying, I got to tune in to see where this goes. And that's exactly what I did. And I'm so excited for Dynamite on Wednesday after what I saw on Redemption. So for anybody saying Redemption sucked, I don't know what you were watching. I thought it was a great show. What am I going to give it as a grade? I got to give it a strong 4 out of 5 stars. It was a fun show. It was not at the level of Revolution. It was not at the level of Double or Nothing. It was not even at the level of Forbidden Door. But that does not mean it was a bad show, top to bottom. I have no complaints about any of the matches. I think that they all had a spot here. I love how the show started an hour earlier. I don't know who gave him that idea, but I love how the show started an hour earlier so it doesn't end in the middle of the fucking night on a Sunday. This is how you do pay-per-view. You always have a cliffhanger so you make that fan want to watch the next week. This was a lot of fun. 4 out of 5 stars. We will be back with another episode of the All Elite Dirt Sheet this week. We're going to be talking about Dynamite, of course, because we got to talk about all the fallout from what happened at Redemption, because now we are officially on the road to AEW All In, the biggest show of the year, taking place at Wembley Stadium on August 30th. I cannot wait. We have a lot of big shows coming up before then, though. We have Grand Slam Mexico. We have AEW this week in Detroit, Michigan, which we may be able to see 2 free agents who recently left the WWE possibly make their way to AEW. It's going to be very, very fun. AEW right now is hot. They continue to stay hot with this hot streak. And we will be here to cover every bit of AEW's hot streak. So with that being said, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit that like button. Thank you so much for always supporting the All Elite Dirt Sheet. Thank you so much for following on TikTok at All Elite Dirt Sheet. Thank you so much for always riding with us. We appreciate you. And we will be back with a new episode. Talk about everything that goes down on AEW Dynamite. So you don't want to miss it. Thank you so much for joining. I will catch you on Thursday with a new episode of the All Elite Dirt Sheet.